Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Festival of Debate event. My name is Joe Chris, and I'm from the not-for-profit social enterprise Opus Independence that runs the Festival of Debate. Now, if you've not come across the festival before, we are a platform for people to come together to discuss the key social, economic, and political issues of the day. And tonight's event is all about building a democratic Yorkshire. Now, the way Britain is currently governed fails to serve the best interests of Yorkshire. At this event, we will look at an alternative approach to governing our county. A new democratic Yorkshire will unite the county, provide a just and fair society, enable our citizens to fully participate in decision making, and provide hope for a better future for our children. Now, we're going to be joined by a very special guest panel in just a minute. Before we get into introducing some of our guests tonight, I'm just going to play you another short video from Democratic Yorkshire that just gives you a little bit more of a taste about Democratic Yorkshire and what it does. Just give me 1 second while I have a brief technical moment. While I work out how to play that. Give me 1 second. So yeah, tonight is actually our second or third event as part of the Festival of Debate. So it's particularly lovely to be having you all with us this evening. It's particularly great to be back in person and online at the same time. So that is especially good. Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of trouble playing the video. So just bear with me 2 seconds. That seems to be having a little bit of a technical misfunction from playing the video. Maybe I'll be able to play it in a little bit after the presentations that we're going to have as part of this event. Sorry about that. It's one of the joys of running a Zoom event. I think my laptop might be not enjoying itself too much. So first off, we're going to have a presentation from Ed. So I'd like to introduce Ed Straw. So Ed, if you could turn your video and microphone on, that would be great. And Ed's going to be speaking to us about why a citizen-led constitutional convention and what it will involve. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks very much, Joe. So here we are thinking about Yorkshire, how it might be if it was running its own affairs. Where do you start? And where you start is to think about, well, what kind of place do you want Yorkshire to be? What sort of values, what sort of behaviours, what sort of things might we consider to be vital and important as we go forward? One of the problems with developing a constitution anywhere in the UK is that we don't have any experience or history of doing it. Unlike, say, Switzerland, where they do it on a regular basis, we don't. So we've got quite a lot of catching up to do in that sense. So first of all, I think the thing to say is that constitutions affect our lives more than most of us anyway appreciate. If you look at something like proportional representation. And there's pretty good research now. You will find that those countries with proportional representation have a lot lower income inequality than those countries with majoritarian systems, with first past the post. Those with PR have much better gender equality. They have a much better response to environmental issues, particularly important, obviously, at this stage. If you take something like the school system, well, the school system in the times just got to be careful where England and Wales certainly has been under reform constantly for the last 40 years, and it's still not reformed. And you say to yourself, well, why is that? And then you look at the adversarial system that we have, and you get Labour coming, well, it was Conservatives, started in 1988, Kenneth Baker, who goes, right, we're going to go over there. Then you get Labour coming in and going, no, we're going to go over there. And then you get the Conservatives coming in, go over here. Actually, it changes between ministers. They do this. So you have this immense zigzag, which is a product of an adversarial system. Whereas in a consensual system, you get a much more consistent view about how schools should work. If you take the Swiss constitution, that has built into it what I call a right to decide. So in other words, it is inbuilt that if you take the cantons, which are the equivalent of the regional governments that we're looking at and local governments that we're looking at in Yorkshire, then a set number of people can say, yeah, we want to call in a decision about X or Y or Z, a park and ride scheme in Geneva, for example. We're going to have proper deliberation on it, not Brexit type deliberation. And we're then going to have a referendum. So constitutions matter. So how do you start to build a constitution? Well, yeah, what are people's views on Yorkshire and its future, on equality? How important is that? On the environment? I mean, even I might say on war. What is Yorkshire's views on democracy? Is this just to be a sort of vote and go away system where we leave it to representation? Or is there going to be participative democracy in between? What decisions are political and what are not political? Politics is like a rash over everything at present, and it shouldn't be that way. There's no need for it. How decentralised and centralised should Yorkshire be? And you might say, well, look, we're talking about decentralising to the Yorkshire level, but take Scotland. It got devolved to Holyrood, but then all of the police forces were amalgamated, which was like the opposite. And are we just talking about devolution to the Yorkshire level? Or are we concerned about devolution to cities, to towns, and to villages? Pickering versus Leeds, how would the arrangements work between those? Particularly important, I think, if you want powerful, effective, and responsive and good public services, how does the whole accountability, transparency, and learning work within this system? So there's a lot to be decided and a lot to be considered. The decisions, I think, particularly that are key in all of this are to think about not just sort of replicating someone else's system, although I would urge you very strongly to look at the Swiss and the German setups. I would urge you also to read some books like Patterns of Democracy, which explore different ways of doing it, possibly even a book that I wrote some years ago on forming a constitution and the components of that. One of the keys that I found in our analysis of systems of governing is the absence of independent, institutionalized feedback. So basically what happens in government typically at present is a policy is developed, it's turned into a law, a program, a project, an institution, it's pushed out, and then there's typically an echoing silence. And it may be relatively quickly, or it may be years later, or it may be never, that someone goes, hang on, I don't think that's working, or it's not working very well, or on balance, it's absorbing far more cost and benefit than it's actually saving. That's nutty. And it's a reason why government gets so gummed up. It gets a proliferation of regulations and laws. There have been 3,500 new laws since Queen Elizabeth II came onto the throne. And parliaments tend to see their lives, and I've seen the House of Lords do this, get terribly excited. We've passed a law, pat themselves on the back and go off to the tea rooms and think they've done a good job. What is a law? It's some words on a piece of paper. It only has meaning when it goes into practice. Is that practice working, and how well is it working? So having an independent feedback system is absolutely vital. You've then got decisions about, well, you know, do we have an executive mayor type arrangement, coupled, of course, with that independent scrutiny and feedback, absolutely vital? Or do we go for the traditional councillors and leader setup? Do we go for what they have in Switzerland, where actually the parties form proportionately what's called a federal council of only 7, and that is the executive. And the president of that council is in office for a year. You'll never have heard, you'll never know who the president of Switzerland is, the prime minister, because they're only there for a year. But do you have that sort of system, which is much more cohesive and consensual? Terms of office. How long should people be allowed to be a prime minister or a president? I mean, in the best policies around the world, you'll find there's an absolute time limit of 2 times 4 years. Would Thatcher, would Blair have been, would Merkel have been much better in office? I appreciate I'm talking at the national level now. Would they have been much better in office if they've been constrained? What independent institutions do you need for standards of public behaviour in office, to name a particularly issue at present? Representative democracy, yes. What about proper participative democracy as well? Should we allow political parties to be standing, or are we looking for people of independent mind only? Actually, if political parties do stand, and there is obviously a case for that, should we allow whipping that brings them into line, or no whipping, which means that they can exercise their personal judgment? Are policies set, or actually is every policy an experiment? So let's conduct, which is the reality, of course. So let's conduct these things in the manner of an experiment. And then particularly what powers go to Yorkshire, what powers go to the cities, what powers go to the towns and villages? How would schools run in all of this system? There's a lot to be decided. So in sum, the system that you put up, that you produce, that you develop, determines performance when measured against purpose. The system produces and molds people. If you get the wrong system, you may have noticed you get the wrong people. If you get the right system, you'll get the right people. Take 11 people in Yorkshire, give them the rule book for football. What do you get? They'll play football. Take those same 11 people, give them the rule book for cricket. What do you get? They'll play cricket. So the question is, what game do you want played in Yorkshire? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. I suppose being in Yorkshire, and especially Sheffield, the home of football, I'd say we probably want people playing football where possible. now I think we've got the Democratic Yorkshire video, so I'm just going to give that another go. There we go.
The way Britain is currently governed fails to serve Yorkshire's best interests. Drastic circumstances demand drastic measures. After all, Yorkshire is our home, and the home of our children. Naturally, we want the best for them. Albert Einstein famously observed, "The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them." We believe that it is time to start looking for an alternative approach to governing our county, one that puts the people in charge of Yorkshire's affairs. A new constitutional framework is needed, one free from Westminster. We are working towards a full-scale independent citizen-led constitutional convention on Yorkshire's future, one where the people, not just politicians, will have their say and decide what happens. This is where you come in. Starting this evening, we need yours and your organisation's help to prepare the groundwork for the Constitutional Convention. We have given ourselves the deadline of Yorkshire Day 2024 for completion of this important undertaking. It will be presented in a report for all to see and pass judgment. Our first task is to think about the long-term outcomes we hope a new Democratic Yorkshire will achieve over time. The second task before us will be to start putting a democratic framework together, one capable of delivering these desired outcomes. Both tasks will require daring to think at the impossible, thinking outside the box. The reality is that in parts of Yorkshire, people still feel just the same as Casper felt in the classic 1969 film Kes. Citizenship should mean more than this. To help make our point, we have borrowed the following definition from the Citizens Network. They define citizenship thus: real citizenship is about having a sense of purpose, awareness that you have something to offer, freedom to pursue your plans, to give life to your dreams, enough money to give you independence and the foundations for a life of your own, giving and receiving a helping hand, working with others to make the changes you want to see, a safe place of your own within the community, a place of welcome and retreat, creativity, contributing, working, enjoying all that the community has to offer. Relationships of warmth and kindness from friends, family and partners. Finally, all this will only be made possible by recreating an atmosphere free from the constant daily hustle and bustle that causes so much stress and depression for many of Yorkshire's people.
Great. So I'm glad you got there the little taste of Democratic Yorkshire in that short video. So, but next up, I'm now pleased to introduce our next presentation before we go into our panel discussion. So now I'd like to welcome Dr. Tiffany, if you'd like to join us and turn your video and microphone on. There you are, and I'll hand the floor to you, please. Thank you. Just turn your microphone, yeah.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Dr. Tiffany R. Holloman. I am co-director of Same Skies Think Tank, and I have a presentation that I will share with you in just a moment. Joe, if you could allow that for me, please.
Should do it now.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Looks good to me, Tiffany. We're not getting any vocals through there, Tiffany. It might be good to just speak to the slide.
Say that again.
We're not getting any vocals through on that video. It might be better to speak to the slides, I'm afraid. This is the problem I was having earlier, Zoom, and you can mix very well.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so what this video was saying was that Same Sky started in 2015 with an email from Ian. Unfortunately, you can't hear him speak because this is a great video, but it's where he's discussing his frustration with the current government system and the effect that it's having on the Yorkshire community. And so in 2015, on the heels of the devolution or referendum deal in Scotland, Ian sent out an email to people of like minds about what can we do with devolution here in Yorkshire. And from that email came the first conference of Same Skies, which was also in 2015. And since then, we have grown into just a network of passionate citizens and organizations who just really want to put the power in the hands of those most ostracized, one, and B, actually those to me that are the more experts of what is happening and going on in our region, because we live here, we walk the streets, we work the shops, we know the power and what we know what's needed. And so that was a little bit about what Ian was saying and a little bit about as far as Same Skies. Again, I mentioned I am one of the co-directors. The other is Andrew Wilson. I'm quite sure a lot of you know Andrew. And so from the period of 2015 to now, we are, let's see, it might start talking. Can you hear this?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's fine. Yeah. Do you mean the video or just? We can hear you fine. I can't hear any audio output from.
Okay, you still can't hear any audio. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for letting me know. Okay, so these are actual clippings from events that we've held, whether it is a West Yorkshire Walks, or what do you think about our region, or again, how could our regional democracy trial citizens income? If you go to our website, which is sameskiesthinktank.com, you will see a host of blogs and articles from people who just care about the community and concerned about what can we do with our future. And what I like about the Same Skies and what we do is that we're not an expert of, we're not a panel of experts. We're just, as far as academics and people that are out of reach or out of touch, or what they consider the ivory tower group. But actually anyone, I mean, everyone we would hope would care enough to want to have their voice heard or their concerns noted, and just not noted, but also play an active role in changing their local laws or changing the regional perspectives on things. And to me, that's the only way that we can push real change, because this top-down approach is not working. And just like Ed said, it's to a point now where we have to do something very different than what's been done before. And I think regional constitution is a good way to go. And maybe we can talk more about that later on. But I wanted to give you all a snippet of, again, things that Same Skies have worked on and the people we've worked with, including kids, that you can see here. Our last big event was our Amplify West Yorkshire publication, which, I'm sorry about that, which we had a book launch back in June. And that's where, again, we've spent a call out to everyone in the region about, what would they like to see as far as how to amplify West Yorkshire. And so we have published a book full of people from the artistic scene and poetry scenes, and also I would say, the NHS, just about everyone that we could get in there, we fit in there, and to discuss different issues in their regions or on their streets, and ways to combat this. And if anyone is interested in the book, just send me a note or an email, and you can purchase a copy, actually the physical copy or the ebook, just let me know. But again, there's some great ideas just about how we can move forward to amplify everyone in West Yorkshire. And that is all. I'm sorry you all couldn't hear the audio, but again, if you let me know, I will send this to you, and hopefully you can just immerse yourself in this feed then. But thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Tiffany. Yeah, that was a great presentation. Thank you for your time. It's great to hear about the work that you're doing with Same Skies. We're now going to go to a bit of a panel discussion, but I was going to introduce Philip Hearthstone from Democratic Yorkshire, who's just going to give a little bit of a frame for the panel discussion before we get into it. So Philip, I'm just going to ask you to unmute and start your video. And once you've done that, we can, there you go. I think we can hear you. You can turn your video on as well, please. Yeah, lovely, perfect. So I'll just hand over to you now, Philip, to give a bit of context to the panel discussion before I introduce the other panelists. Thank you very much.
Well, hopefully the video gave some context to what we're trying to achieve with Democratic Yorkshire. And the thing I would like to emphasise is that Democratic Yorkshire is about seeking out partnerships. And we certainly want to seek out partnerships with the people that have spoken or are speaking this evening to move things forward. We've given ourselves a deadline of Yorkshire Day, which is the 1st of August 2014, to try and produce, well, we will produce a report on what a citizens network would look like and the kind of things it needs to look at. Now, we decided that we could just let it run on and on and on forever, or we could try and discipline ourselves to concentrate on a particular date. And reaching 70 by that date seemed a very good time to me to have it done. So from a personal point of view, the 1st of August 2014 seems quite good. It's time for us to lift our horizons, as has been indicated by Tiffany and by Ed. It's time also, and I know that they do this at in West Yorkshire, to think very much outside the box. We've already got lots of political theories that have been going on for years, but I'm a Batley lad, and anybody that knows Batley will know that it's declined over those years, and there's absolutely no hope for the kids in Batley. I have a young friend who visits me here in Bridlington, who's a chav. His girlfriend's just had a baby, and they live in a small flat here in Brid. And I know, speaking to them, that the idea of him getting a job and being successful in a job and building a family life together is almost impossible. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's not on. And it's time for us to change and to start taking much more control of ourselves. Tonight is the first of a series of events about Democratic Yorkshire, the kind of Democratic Yorkshire that we want to pass on to our children, grandchildren, and future generations. The next session will be on Wednesday, the 3rd of August, when we will start discussing the economics involved in getting Yorkshire into a better place than it is now. Now, we're not wanting to follow the traditional economics that has just let us down. As far as we're concerned, neoliberalism has just had its day. The Tories have tried it, Labour have tried it, the coalition tried it, and the people of Yorkshire are fed up of them trying it because we're worse off as a result. So that's gone as far as we're concerned. And what we need to do is start thinking about a new kind of democratic economics that will carry Yorkshire through. Now, don't ask me what the answer is, because I'm not an economist, but I do know I'm a grandfather, and I do know this, that it's not damn well good enough as it is. So we need to change that. That session will be followed up on the 9th of November with a more detailed discussion around cooperatives. Now, a lot of people don't realise that the cooperative is a democratic institution, and I'm a big believer in the cooperative movement, and I would like to see more cooperatives across Yorkshire, where people have an opportunity to have a say in the detailed goings on in their life. Sorry, a policeman's just walked past and it distracted me. Goings on in their life. So that would include, and I'm a next housing manager, and that might be the reason why I'm pushing this, housing cooperatives as well. The details will be published by the end of June as far as the first of these sessions is concerned that I mentioned, and then of course the other ones will be mentioned later. I will be in contact with a number of people to try and bash out what these things mean, and try and make a useful presentation for people to study. So if you're watching tonight, be warned, we will be in touch with you again, and we will be dragging you in, because we need you, and it's your views that matter, not this old guy's, but your views what matters. And I'm back to you now, Joe.
Great, thank you so much for that. That was brilliant. So now we're going to go to a wider panel discussion. So I'd like to ask Tiffany and Ed to turn their videos back on, but also to introduce a new guest, Andy, as well. Andy, if you could come back and join us, that would be lovely. Brilliant. So should I introduce these three questions then, Philip?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, I will do. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, bro. So just to start off with a provocation before we get into any of the audience Q&A, I'll just read this first question first and then we'll get into the other two. But our self-proclaimed task is to seek a fresh new framework for the governance of our county, one that puts the well-being of Yorkshire citizens, economy and environment first. What would be your personal top 3 priorities for future Yorkshire, let's say 50 years from now? So if we could try and keep the answers for this relatively quick fire, that would be much appreciated. So Andy, as you're fresh and you're joining us, and you have such a spectacular background, we'll start with you, Andy.
It's distracting, I know. Sorry about that. My name is Andy Train. I'm the chair of the Hull and East Riding of Yorkshire LGBT plus forum. I'm also involved with Pride in Hull, one of the largest free to enter Pride events, 21 years this year. I think for me, it's seeing the generations of kind of are more capable of embracing difference and diversity, going into schools and colleges and talking to people, folks that come to our meetings on a monthly basis, and the number of support groups and things that have just sort of sprung up out of a sheer need. I think I can answer this quite quickly in saying that, you know, for folks in 50 years' time to be able to live their fully authentic selves, their lives, they have support, they're not dealing with hate on a regular basis, and they can just be themselves, and they've got all the help and encouragement and support and that they can have. So that's me. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Andy. And I think I'd, on behalf of myself and on the other panelists, I think we'd absolutely join you in that wish as well. So, thank you very much for the great work that you do. Let's go to Ed. Let's hear from you, Ed. What are your priorities? Yeah, lovely.
I mean, that's quite a question, isn't it? But I guess it's the way we are together. So I'd echo absolutely everything that Andy said. Yes, in those particular circumstances, but actually for everyone. And I'd sort of like it. I'd diversity, right? Diversity in everything, right? Diversity, in all of the things that we commonly use that word, but diversity of lifestyle. So that, I don't know, van dwellers, Daily Mail readers, whoever, so long as we're all contributing fairly, then what your lifestyle is doesn't matter. That is totally up to you. And gosh, that will be absolutely wonderful. I think a powerful civil society rather than us, what's happened to a lot of public services that came out of originally civil society, like social services, doing stuff, setting up a charity, providing support, but then the state took these on, jolly good, that's great, but then the state took them on in a way that became bureaucratized and then kept us away. And also we expect government to do everything. So the sort of reconnecting, and I do a lot of this with compassionate communities of civil society activism. And I think lastly, we are individuals, but we're also collective. And we're not going to sort climate change, for example, and pollution and biodiversity loss unless we act collectively. So I'd love to see us, all Yorkshire, acting much more collectively.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ed. And we'll go to you next. Tiffany, please.
Yes, the 3 things I thought of were healthcare, taking back, I don't know if we can do it in our own regional way, but the NHS. As you can tell, I'm from the US, and I know a dilapidated healthcare system when I see one. And I've recognized how much underfunding has gone into the NHS and the demise that looks inevitable. And I would like to some way, I don't know how, stem that off in our region and like Philip said, make it a cooperative so that we can take control of it, so that we can ensure that our citizens, if it grows into the whole of England and the UK, great, but at least start here with that. The second thing, also going back to Philip, would be a change in the local economics. I'm thinking 50 years from now, I'm thinking some sort of Yorkshire crypto coin where I can just walk. I live in Morley, and I could just walk down the street to the local farm here, because there's one right down the road, and get some mints without having to worry about how outside world issues affect the cost of me buying mints at my local Morrison's or Aldi. I could just go there and get it with my Yorkshire crypto that I created by riding a bicycle, generating energy for my own home, so I don't have to pay EDF. That's something, again, I don't know, but hey, let's go there. The last thing I mentioned was I would take it down to the children and active participation, because again, if you're thinking 50 years from now, they need to know the power of their voice now. They don't need to wait until they're 16 or 18. No, they need to be actively engaging and seeing how they are not taken for granted in their ideas, and how it works in a system that actually wants to ensure their welfare. And I think it starts with them. We have to do more engaging with kids, and kids need to learn what voting is and what it means and why it's important when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and not 17, 18, 20. But if I'm gonna cut it off, Joe, but that's what I was thinking.
I was going to cut you off there. No, that was great. Thank you. I could tell you were just getting in your flow then. So yeah, we'll and then finally, Philip, do you want to answer that question, or you're muted, Philip?
Am I all right now? Yeah.
Yes, you are. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thanks. Like Andy, I'm a gay man. Now, what I'd like to do is just, rather than take us forward 50 years, I'd just like to take us back 50 years from when I was growing up as a gay man. And things were a hell of a lot different then. There was a lot of prejudice around. I daren't tell my parents. I daren't admit it to myself, let alone tell it to my parents. I made the mistake of getting married because that was the thing to do. And life just was so different. There was prejudice, you were pufters, you were all sorts of things. Growing up in shirt lifters, all sorts of names you were called growing up in Batley and surrounding areas like Batley. So this past 50 years, a lot has happened, mainly thanks to people like Andy and others who have campaigned about gay rights. But the thing I'd like to see in 50 years' time is us all accepting others' rights to be different, and that they are different. The right of difference is so important. And yeah, I'm different to my next door neighbour, very much different, but it's about accepting that difference, and that's so important. One of the things that I've been reading is about economics and looking at something called donut economics. Now, my friend Richard, who's on here as well, and a fellow founder of this group, isn't all that keen on it, but I am. And why? Because donut economics is about working between the outer side, which is the state of the environment, the ecology, which has already been mentioned, all those things that are going to pot, and which our world leaders as well as national leaders are letting go to pot. They had a conference in Glasgow, which was an absolute waste of time. and they didn't believe in what they were saying. There was a picture of the President of the United States supposedly listening, and he was actually asleep. So, come on, where is this thing? But within that, we have to think about going back to this lad I was mentioning and his lifestyle. And the inner circle is about the basic needs that people have. And we've got to find an economic system that works within those two. And we won't do it by paying service to the capitalist system. I'm sorry, but it's got to be said. We just won't do it. We've tried it and it ain't going to happen. So that would be my my other thing. We've set 5 in the question, but I think those will do for 5.
Yeah. I think we'll probably have to move on that. So I might. All right. Let's go on to the next question, and then we might go into some audience questions, which is about in which ways could a self-governed Yorkshire do better than a centralised Westminster government? So, Democratic Yorkshire is all about developing people's sense of self-worth and creating opportunities for individuals and families. In what ways could a self-governed Yorkshire do this better than a centralised Westminster government? Let's go to you again, Andy, if that's all right.
That's lovely. Thank you. I think for me, it's about responsiveness. I'd like to think that if we have an opportunity based in Yorkshire, and I didn't say I was from Hull, but it's nice to have a good mixture of us here from different parts of Yorkshire. I do love North Yorkshire. I've really got to say that to anybody from North Yorkshire. Many happy holidays in Whitby, etc. And we are working with our friends up in Bridlington to create the first Bridlington Pride in July. But I think being able to respond locally to needs that are happening locally, I get very frustrated about hearing stories from friends, colleagues, families who are having to go down to London to get help. There's not enough help in the local area, particularly around gender clinics and that kind of thing. And folks, when I talk to them down south, and they're kind of, they have no idea and no understanding about never mind the geography, the ruralness and the vastness and the beauty of our county, and I think that services have to be fashioned accordingly, dependent on being able to outreach and that kind of thing. And we've so moved on. I mean, Philip, in the last 20 odd years, I had somebody from East Riding Council say to me one day, we don't need any services for anybody in the East Riding of Yorkshire from an LGBT point of view, because we don't have any gay people in the East Riding of Yorkshire. And so we've responded, and including those hateful men of Bridlington, we've responded with a Pride event and getting help out there. But for me, it is about ownership. It's about pride. It really is about pride. And I'll shut up. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Andy, there. That was brilliant. Let's now go to Ed.
Well, I mean, this one is, why self-governed better than central government? I mean, you could just, it's very easy to answer in a practical sense, and just look at the top-down disasters, to quote a friend who's a consultant, medical consultant down in Somerset, top-down disasters coming out of Whitehall to try and do something about improving health in Somerset in this case, and that is replicated just time and time again. And the argument is sort of economies of scale. Well, the problem is you get these immense diseconomies of scale, first of all. Secondly, it's the lack of accountability. If a service is being provided and delivered locally by people who are locally accountable, then there is a much closer relationship and accountability relationship and responsiveness for those services. thirdly, I mean, as you say, it's as Tiffany was saying earlier on, in terms of sort of understanding that, well, I'm in North Wales. Well, actually, life here is quite different, and the circumstances are quite different to if you're in a big city like Leeds, for example. Well, if you the one size fits all thing, it doesn't fit all. The Swiss constitution, Stuart does seem to have a bit of a problem with Switzerland. I just go around and look at things that are working, and there is nowhere that's perfect. And Stuart's concern is that women there didn't get the vote till 50 years ago. I do incidentally think, Stuart, that the inequality now in both gender and income will be much lower than it is in the UK. But so, yeah, let's not pick holes in things. Let's go and look at where things work and how they work. So if you look at their constitution, it says that the federal government, if you like, that would be the UK government, only does those things which localities cannot do better, essentially. And that means where you need across the board regulation, or there is some economy of scale. So yeah, it should all start. And by the way, it doesn't just start at the Yorkshire level. It starts at the village, town, city level.
Great, thanks very much, Ed. And to you, Tiffany.
Okay. I'm rereading a book from my undergrad, Planet of Slums. I don't know if you can see it, by Mike Davis. And in it is a quote, and I'm going to read this because it's very pertinent to that right now. If unmitigated capitalism has a mainly unacceptable face, a corrupt state acting on behalf of the rich is still worse. In such circumstances, little is to be gained by even trying to improve the system. I think that's exactly where we are. Is the leveling up, again, it's just trying to put a Band-Aid on a pipe that's burst a long time ago, or plaster, sorry. But I just feel like if we are to, again, do something very different, maybe a cooperative voting system where we have people in Pontefract and the places that you don't hear about all the time, in Bridlington, which is one of my favorite places. And you have maybe 100 people from there, and not just 100 people of the same people, but 100 people that represents janitorial staff or the unemployed or students, and from different levels. And then we all collectively get together and focus on, how do we change your region, or how do we change your area? What do you all need? What is not needed? And I think if we can maybe focus on, again, do something, it has to be small though. It has to start from the bottom. It has to start from us. But again, everyone's been saying from the top, it doesn't work. And neoliberalism, that needs to be in the graveyard. And but that would be what I think. But again, it's just me. I don't want to name what we all should do. I want everyone to put their hats into the ring and see what we can come up with. But that's it, Joe.
Lovely, thank you very much, Tiffany. Philip, do you any?
Yeah, for 28 years of my life, I worked for Kirklees Council, working with residents, tenants and residents associations. Now, people thought, well, including managers, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They won't be able to, but actually they did. And the Kirklees Federation of Tenants and Residents Association revolutionised the housing service to the point that that the chair of the federation, a close friend of mine, Cliff Whiteley, became chair of the ALMO, which managed the service. And what did they do? They had joint meetings with councillors. They discussed the local issues, the local councillors. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Joe, I don't know what I've said funny, but they did. They looked at things, parking in their area. It was an important issue for many of them. I remember when the Conservative government under the white-haired fellow, I never remember his name, it's so insignificant, but they introduced tax on VAT on heating bills. And the tenants each said, why don't we have some kind of affordable heating, and so on? Why can't we look at heating as an issue? And as a result, Kirklees was the first local authority to introduce double glazing and wall insulation to every council house across the country. And that was tenant power. It was people speaking up, saying what is important to them. Another thing I'll just recall is when it came to looking at the rents each year, they were told how much each thing that they'd asked for would cost. And then they'd vote. And I remember one particular year, they voted for 50p on their rents so they could have a caretaking service. Now, to me, this is democracy working. We're at a very local level. We're talking about an estate of 500 houses or whatever, people discussing what matters for them. And that's what I'd like to see grow within the Democratic Yorkshire movement. Over to you, Joe, so you can have another little laugh at me, whatever I did say.
No, that was great, Philip. Thank you. Let's go to the some of the questions in the Q&A, I think now, which we've got. Let's go from the top one that came through from Matthew Smith, which was to panelists. Do you think the implementation of Metro Mayor and City Region have made South Yorkshire more or less democratic? Let's start off by going to maybe you, Andy. You got an opinion on the Metro Mayors?
The lad not from South Yorkshire. It's an interesting one. I going across to and obviously sticking with my theme and my involvement with Pride and LGBT plus community, and going across to Manchester and enjoying the focus that often can be brought to issues and matters as they arise, and having somebody who you can focus on to get things done and sorted, that you've not got like I suppose I could equate it to, dealing with, the comparison of dealing with Hull City Council and East Riding Council, dealing with characters that kind of do get things done or not, but having somebody who's held to account in that way, in a more focused way. Obviously, I'm coming from a totally uneducated end of things. I'd be really interested to see what the other panelists think about this. But certainly, I mean, even for us in this area, bringing Hull and the East Riding together and having that opportunity, it's certainly worth exploring. And of course, people have to choose this. And I'd certainly love to hear from somebody from South Yorkshire to see what their experience is. They're the ones who are living it on a daily basis.
Great, thank you very much, Andy. Let's go to Tiffany. Have you got an opinion on the Metro Mayors?
Yeah, again, I'm not in South Yorkshire, but with West Yorkshire recently having a mayor, I can say I see it as a benefit, because just reflecting on what Andy said, I wrote in a piece about a year ago, or not quite a year ago, after we actually elected our mayor, that now you actually have a person you can touch that's local to get things done or to rant about what's not done. And I think that is an improvement upon someone, an MP who is never there and trying to figure out how to contact someone through some automated system, when I can actually tweet or go to her office and say, hey, this. I think that, yes, that to me is more democratic now. I don't know, again, I'm not familiar with South Yorkshire's politics, but I would hope that that would be the case.
Great. Thank you very much, Tiffany. Ed, have you got anything to add? I mean, I suppose, this question is about the mayoralities more generally as well,
Yeah.
as opposed to just the
I mean, I can't comment on those particular ones, and of course there are, and I don't know, but it may be, you've
We've lost you.
elected a particularly bad one, but as a generality, it's just what Andy and Tiffany said. They work much better for two reasons. One is, there's a clear point of accountability, but there's also a clear point of authority. And one of the problems with local government at present, it's not really local government, it's local authorities, because 90%, as much as 90% of the decisions made in a local authority are made either because the central government diktat or because of the decisions of the officials, because the capacity of a group of councillors to have influence is very, very difficult. And if you look around the world, the executive mayors work on average much better. But you've got to have proper scrutiny, proper feedback. And of course, it's not just about the mayor, it's about how much money can you raise locally, or is it that, central government is still dishing out the money? So 1% of funding is raised locally in the UK. It's 16% in Germany, for example, and there are other features of local government. I mean, I was in London at the time of Ken Livingstone. Ken Livingstone came in. He sorted out the tubes and he sorted out the buses for lasting effect, whether you like him or not, or whether you approve of his dress code or what he's done in the past. He did the job.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. Philip, have you got anything to add about the Metro Mayor system, and do you think that adds to democracy in the UK and this sort of general devolution of powers?
It does add to democracy in the UK, yes, certainly, of course it does. But I personally would prefer some kind of Yorkshire parliamentary system, and I'd prefer one where ordinary people are elected to be able to represent their communities. I don't want to influence other people. I think it's as a sort of coordinator for Democratic Yorkshire. That's enough for me to say for the time being.
Great. Thank you very much, Philip. And I suppose the interesting thing about that is, historically Sheffield actually voted against initially implementing the mayor system. Okay, let's go to another a question. I think I'll probably come to Ruth Hubbard's question, which is, panel members have referred a lot to the importance of embracing difference and diversity in a meaningful regional democracy. Agreed. For me, this is about the importance of pluralism and the ability to make democratic frameworks and spaces that embrace multiple perspectives. This stands in contrast with what appears to be a saturation and stranglehold in our region by party politics, where political control and the party line is all important, and I think intensifying any reflections. I mean, I suppose this question is more generally, isn't it? It's about, party politics and its hold on politics, both locally and nationally, and what that means for, effective decision making, on both a local and a regional basis. Andy, you turned your video on then, so I'm assuming you have something to say here. So I will gladly pass on to you, Andy.
Not necessarily, but I think that something I did want to mention is opportunities to kind of mix with other people who have other ideas and other lifestyles or any of the protected characteristics. And I think we've got some opportunities, particularly in the old Humberside area. If I could just do a public announcement about putting Humberside on letters and things, it doesn't exist anymore. I'm proudly a Yorkshireman, and we do have with Humberside Police, which obviously covers over the south bank of the River Humber, and we have these independent advisory groups, and we actively ensure that there are people from lots of different communities able to have a voice and have ideas and guide the police as much as possible around what is happening, and it's really quite useful. So I'd like to see more of those types of opportunities, because I don't think there's other times I sit in a room with people of other faith groups, and often I'll look around the room and think, gosh, on the face of it, what you might be preaching might be hate against me as a pansexual man, and also my friends and colleagues who may be transgendered, not cisgendered, and that kind of thing. But it's great when you're there up close and personal with people and have that opportunity to do that. Sorry, I'm seeming to be going off on one, but it is lovely and it's rich, and I think that's really important to have those opportunities to listen to other people. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, and that diversity of viewpoint is so important, and actually absolutely critical as a function of our democracy. Is about how we listen to voices that might otherwise be marginalised. Yeah. In our society, and that's absolutely critical to it. I mean, I suppose returning just a tiny bit more to, I suppose, Ruth's specific question around that sense of how party politics specifically kind of affects the discourse and the ability, that almost tribalism that you get, that you might say a Labour politician might not embrace a Green politician's idea, or even a Tory politician's idea. What's your perceptions on how that tribalism kind of affects our politics, and do you think a kind of I suppose brings in reflections on the party whip system here as well. The individual politicians or MPs aren't allowed to vote against the party line. Maybe I'll come to you on this, Ed. Have you got perception on how this sort of party politics tribalism is really affecting democracy?
Yeah, I mean I think some people are now arguing that political parties have had their day, and I can quite see why they are, and that therefore we should be moving away from them. I mean, obviously, if you've got a proportional representation system, and indeed you've then got a consensus-based democracy, then party politics in that tribal sense, the adversarial extremist sense that we've got, falls by the wayside. But political parties do tend to be tribal, and they do, even in the current circumstances, where if what you want to do is have a change of government nationally, it seems to be incredibly hard to get Labour to cooperate with the Greens and with the Lib Dems, although that may happen. That's the first thing. The second thing is to have a different form of decision making. So this is where the participative decision making and the right to decide, and it's not just a once in a blue moon Brexit type vote. It's where a group of people decide within an area, which may be Batley, or it may be Leeds, or it may even be a village, that we want to take a decision on something specific to us. It may be about a flood defence and a type of flood defence. And I've been involved down in Devon in a participative process for deciding about a flood defence. That participative process not only meant that the community there in Sholden decided, yes, they needed one, even though they're going, you know, do we really want these concrete walls getting in the way? When was the last time the tide was high and so on? But going through a process of looking at the evidence, testing the evidence, but it also produced a better scheme because the local people could see that the stormwater coming down was an impact as well. And that was going to get stuck behind the flood defences. Then it was built, and because the local people were on board, they're actually helping rather than being really annoyed. The scheme comes in under time and under budget, and people are much happier. So yeah, I mean, party politics may continue, but it's only a relatively small way of taking decisions. So there are many others and many better ways of taking decisions. I don't know whether any of that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Ed. Then we'll come to you now, Tiffany. How do you think party politics affect democracy?
I think it's okay. I'm from the US, 350 million people, and there's basically two parties. That's outrageous. That is, I mean, really, you think about it, 350 million people and trying to fit their ideas and thoughts into two parties. It doesn't work, and it's inefficient, and it needs updating like everyone else has been saying. And here I come here and I moved to Yorkshire, and there's the Green Party and the Yorkshire Party and Liberal Democrats. But I also see the shift. When I was lecturing at Leeds, there was a student of mine she was a mature student who had 2 kids, and this Brexit was on the horizon, and we were talking about voting, and she was just like, I don't feel my voice is anywhere. And she was like, I don't vote anymore. I haven't voted in years because I don't feel like I'm gonna be heard or like I matter. And that was heartbreaking because she's likely to pass that type of thinking on to the 2 kids. And yes, I get what Ed's saying about another way to think about how we wrangle ourselves together and how do we get our voices across collectively without it being so siloed into these, you have to be this and you have to be that. And if you vote this way or if you're assigned this way, it's in that way in the US too. If you're a Democrat and you go to the election poll, your ticket is going to be Democratic. And the only way you cannot is if you put non-affiliate, and then you're restricted. You can't vote everything. And so they trap you. It's supposed to be, it appears to be, in theory, democratic, yes, but it's not. And again, I don't know. I again go with the cooperative voting type of thing that I think we can come up with, but political parties, they may have well had their day, unless it's one about not having any money party. That might catch on really, really quick, and I'll let it go from there.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. Philip, do you have anything to add on the party political system? Well, notice your video seems to have stopped working. Oh, you're back. Welcome, Philip. Do you have a comment on the party political system and how it affects democracy?
Right, sorry, I've missed some of that because it's beautiful living overlooking the sea, but the trouble is the connection's terrible sometimes. But I have picked up a couple of points that people have said, and to be honest, I think we need to, we talked in the video about thinking outside the box, and part of the thinking outside the box would be to ask the question, have political parties had their day? Do we need them anymore? Let's face it, we vote for people to from the different political parties as they select them and so on. And then they go to the council or the parliament, or they become the mayor's not too bad, I suppose, but they go to these representative bodies and they're whipped. So they're told how they're going to vote. And the whipping system is one of the worst things for democracy, because you just line up your votes and you count. We've had this last few days with the Prime Minister saga, that he's been able to whip his people into voting a certain way to support him. And it doesn't work, because it means it takes the democratic control away from those people that have been elected on our behalf. So I'm much more in favour of us electing local representatives to a parliament to speak up on our behalf, not to be whipped, not to be drawn into party politics, but to represent their communities in a genuine way. And I think that's what the questionnaire was about, really, representing people in a genuine way. So yeah, stop the whipping system.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Philip. It's just after 8 o'clock, so I think we're going to start to close the event. So I'm just going to ask panelists maybe for some final thoughts, really, and maybe, you know, a good frame for this, I think, and generally for the Festival of Debate, is thinking about you know, a solutions focus and thinking about, you know, how we get there. So, you know, how can we achieve, you know, more democratic Yorkshire, both thinking in the, you know, in the immediate short term, what's the call to action for people maybe attending the event, or for maybe people watching this afterwards? What are the core things do you think that people can do and do in their own communities to, you know, to encourage some of these processes and actions to take place? And I will start with you, Andy, if that's all right.
Very kind of you. Thank you. Just to say thank you for inviting me to participate with this. It's lovely to engage with lots of other people, and it's very exciting. And Philip for reaching out originally, for educating me on this that's happening. I just encourage people to get involved with your communities now. You know, don't wait. You know, reach out, see what's going on out there in your communities, and fully participate. And for all those people who say, I wish things were different, or we can't change anything, you absolutely can. You just need to reach out and find out what is going on. You know, in the system that we've got at the moment, obviously something does need to change, and I think it's exciting. I think that we can make a difference. Certainly, we will have more ownership. I think more people will get involved, and we'll see the results of you know, the work and the opportunities that they've got locally. So please just get involved. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. I'll come to you next, Tiffany. What are your sort of final thoughts on this?
To piggyback on Andy, yes, get involved. If you need an example, look at me. I'm from a rural location in North Carolina. I moved to the UK, and I was like, hey, I like my little village here in Morley, which is in South Leeds. I want to ensure that I can make it better. And I just go and I talk to somebody about it, and here I am. It's you do what you can. That's the thing. But if everyone did what they could, the impact would be so grand, like Philip was saying about the Kirklees Council. So if I can encourage anyone to do anything, it would not to be silent. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. And to you next, Ed.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favour of that, without a doubt. And I think there's to sort of add to that, there's something about not putting up with all the crap that is rained upon us in almost every direction. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate that there are some big things out here, like, you know, well, the whole neoliberal system and crap Westminster and Whitehall government and so on. But to demand more of what's going on, in whether it's a company, whether it's a local authority, whether it's central government, whether it's an MP, whatever, and just to really vigorously push back. And the second thing is then there's actually a lot we can do ourselves. And there's a very good local group down here that produces local vegetables, which is, you know, they're really nice vegetables, and actually their prices are very good. And they don't involve however many air miles it is in bringing apples from New Zealand, for example. And more of those things where we just get on and sort things out ourselves collectively. But at the same time, I do think it's important that if we're going to convince a wider populace that this Yorkshire Parliament is serious, and the people who are promoting it and pushing it know what they're about and understand what they're about, then you've got to hold something up. I've sometimes, you know, do you want one of those? Well, the one of those for a Yorkshire Parliament is a constitution.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ed. And I will leave almost the last word to you, Philip. What is your sort of lasting thoughts or reflections on tonight's event and how we can achieve a democratic Yorkshire?
Right, well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the panellists for their contributions. We've had some absolutely amazing comments, and I'd like to thank the audience for the questions and so on. And please, if you have any ideas or any grumbles or any thoughts on the way ahead, please let us know, because we're just ordinary folk, and we're not professionals, we're not politicians, but we do see a problem that we want to resolve. I'm long enough in the tooth to remember the Heath government. Now we're going back into the 1970s, and the 1970s was a bit of a disastrous period in a way, because it was the start of everything going wrong. But the thinking was, let's make things big. Big is better. Well, they tried doing that with local government reform. They did it with all sorts of things, and it's turned out, well, actually, small is beautiful. And that's the thought I'd like to leave everybody with tonight. Small is beautiful. And that's why we need a parliament or a democracy of our own, and we need to bring it right down to the local villages, towns like Morley, and I've lived in Morley, by the way, Tiffany, it's a lovely place. Towns like Morley, and there it begins, and it grows up from that. Right, that's my little last word, Andy. Sorry, Joe.
Lovely.
I'm looking at Andy.
No, that's all good. Thank you, Philip, and thank you for all your energy and time in putting the event together, and all of the panelists that have appeared tonight. So a final thank you to Andy Train, to Tiffany Holloman, and from Same Skies Think Tank, and to Ed Straw and to Philip Hearthstone from Democratic Yorkshire. So thank you for all your time and energy in attending tonight. Tonight's been part of the Festival of Debate. You can find out more about the Festival of Debate at festivalofdebate.com. We've got a whole range of online and in-person events going on till the 30th of May, and we'll be running a hub day on the future of democracy on the 21st of May in Sheffield, at Sheffield Town Hall, with a whole range of very exciting people, including Ajay Temelkuran, John Alexander, and Jackie Weaver, and lots of other people. So please do check that out and attend if you're interested. But that's it for us tonight. Thank you very much for all your time and your questions. Cheers. Good night.